Good afternoon or good evening, whatever time zone you're in. Welcome to our 30-minute virtual sip with Vicki. My name is Julie and I'm the operations manager here at Virtual Live Labs, and I'll go ahead and get us started. I could run through Vicki's resume of 20 years managing thousands of employees in the virtual and the work at home environment, or her national exposure and recognition. But the bottom line is that if you ask Vicki what she considers herself as in the work and home environment, she would say that she's an operator. What she shares today and in her book, The Leadership Toolbox, are real life experiences. This isn't theory or something that she's read in a book or heard at a conference. Vicki knows what it's like to try to get people to show up for work when it's Super Bowl Sunday, or it's Mother's Day, or a Monday after a holiday weekend when there's normally a lot of absenteeism. She understands what happens when money's bleeding off the bottom line because employees are late and lost in the virtual hallways. She understands when operations complain that recruiting isn't hiring the right people and that they have to perform magic and make them top performers. She knows what it's like to work for organizations that demand large waves of new agents every week or every other week for months to get ready for a product launch or a holiday ramp up. And she truly understands the struggles of managing employees, training and mentoring leaders when you can't see them. Vicki's done turnaround after turnaround in the virtual and work at home environment, so she's been forced to get creative and to try new things. She laughs when she talks about how many times that she's fallen flat on her face. People who know her understand that failure is never an option and there is always a way. You will see how our operational strategies are creative and way out of the box. And actually, if you know her, you'll know that she does not even believe in a box. As companies have contacted us here at Virtual Live Labs, we hear so many companies how they're struggling in the remote environment. So she's going to move through a lot of questions today. If you haven't heard her speak, I will warn you, she tends to move quickly. So have something to write with and try to keep up. Ladies and gentlemen, here's Vicki.
Oh, thanks so much, Julie. Well, welcome everybody, and thank you so much for joining us. People are asking us, why are we doing this? We're having executive and middle management supervisors of contact centers, both customer service and sales, contact our company along with training and development organizations and training departments inside of call centers to ask us, how do you really navigate virtual? How can we really be best in class? So we decided just to sort of ask people to send in their questions, and then I would sit down for 30 minutes and I would answer them. But first, I want to tell you that this month is my 20th anniversary from managing my first work at home environment. And I came from brick and mortar like everybody else. And I was hired by a company that wanted to save real estate costs, and they wanted to go virtually. And this is before a lot of technology was even out there. And they hired me based on a recommendation. So I went in, and after 90 days, I fell completely flat on my face. It was hard. I couldn't see the folks. All the magic that I had when I was in brick and mortar was suddenly gone. The training wasn't sticking. People were leaving. They were late for work. They weren't showing up to meetings or coachings on time. The stats were slipping, and I really didn't know what to do. And I wanted just to quit. And one night after about 3 months, I went to bed and woke up the next morning, decided I was just going to quit. But I knew I had to give notice. And so I just decided I was just going to go in and be myself and just enjoy the people, because I love people, and not even worry about the stats. So I went to work and had a really good day. And I went for another day and then another day. And 45 days later, guess what? Sales conversion was up 45%. So the CEO called me and said, "Hey, Vic, this is great. What are you doing?" And I said, "I absolutely have no idea. I don't know." And he's like, "You better figure it out because we want to go to 300 people. And I'm like, yeah, I'm all over it. Well, 90 days passed, and our conversion rate had gone up over 100%, but I still couldn't figure out what I did. And yes, I'm charismatic and I'm outgoing, but is that really what it was about? I didn't believe so, but I didn't know why. And so I left that organization 3.5 years later and went on to organization after organization in the virtual work at home environment. And I could only manage so many people with this charismatic, outgoing personality. And I couldn't duplicate myself. And I was like, I'm never going to move forward in my career if I don't figure this out. And so about 12 years ago, I got into large scale operations in a contact center environment, 100% virtual. and the group started getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I realized I was going to have to figure it out. So what I did is I sort of took a two-pronged approach. I asked people, hey, through the years, why do you like working in my organization? And then I decided I was going to ask myself what I love to do. And here's what I came up with. Here was sort of the magic that first CEO was talking about. One, I love people. I'm a people person. And I'm a mentoring leader. In other words, I explain things. So as my dad told me when I was 16, Vicki, people may not like the decision you make, but if you sort of lead them along that path, they're going to follow you because it'll make business sense to them. So when I look at my life, as I started growing organizations, big ones, thousands and thousands of employees in the work at home environment, there were a couple of things. One, I noticed that I'd rather be on the phone with an agent coming out of nesting to find out where the gaps were than to be in a CAP planning call. I would much rather be explaining to folks how we were going to implement technology and finding out what their feedback was than to, work on my budget for the next year. And I also realized that by talking with people, I could literally find out what was going on the floor and they could help me make the decision. So it was being high touch and a mentoring leader. But I had to figure out how to emulate that and duplicate it. And that's what I figured out 12 years ago. And here's the secret. The first thing is everything you know about work at home, you have to sort of just start from scratch, throw brick and mortar out the window, and you literally have to re-engineer how you navigate what we call at Virtual Live Labs a virtual first environment. Now, what does that mean? It means that you look at it through virtual lenses and think of virtual first. So sort of forget everything you've known about brick and mortar. And then it comes down to two secret ingredients. And you'll see me talk about these as I answer your questions that you've submitted. The first one is touch points. How we have touch points with our employees during the day in the work at home environment. And the second one is this communication feedback loop that is multiplied many, many, many times inside work environments. And so I'm going to start, we're in here a few minutes now. The rest of the time I'm going to answer your questions. So Julie, if you'll give me a question, I'll be more than happy to answer it.
Awesome. All right. The first one, they say, I've been working at my current company for 3 years. I just got promoted to supervisor over 15 people. Working at home for the last year during COVID has been a real struggle. I know that I can manage people, but I don't know how to do it remotely.
Great. Okay, that's a great question. And we get that a lot. It is very different. So don't feel like you're different. We've all fallen flat on our face and we all feel sort of disconnected. And so do our employees. Really what it comes down to, I'm going to talk about that first thing, is about touch points during the day. So put your brick and mortar hat on for a minute and let's picture that I'm an agent in the contact center world and I'm going to go to the restroom. I get up out of my chair, I walk down the aisle and Bob sees me coming. He turns around in his seat and says, "Hey, Vic." And we stop, we chit chat for a few minutes, maybe 30 seconds, touch point number one. Then I go to the end of the aisle and I turn right and I start walking toward the hallway and Mary's there. Mary just had a baby and I know she's got pictures. And so she sees me and she waves and I stop. And of course she's got pictures. So I stop and look at pictures of the baby. Touch point number two. Then I proceed down the hall and I see someone else and say, "Hey, how's it going?" Touch point number three. I open the door to the restroom and someone's coming out and we're like, "Hey, how's it going? How your call's been today?" "Oh, it's been great. Yeah, have a great day." Touch point number four. I go into the restroom, I do my business, I come out, and now I'm standing at the counter washing my hands with 3 other people, and we're starting to talk shop, right? It's like, "Hey, did you have that crazy customer today?" Or, "Hey, the technology is just not working?" Whatever the case may be, and I'm talking shop. Touch point 5. Leave the restroom. I've got to get back to my desk, but I'm going to go grab something out of the vending machine. Run into the break room. 3 people standing at the vending machine. Touch point number 6. Talk to a couple of people as I'm walking out the door, realize I'm running late, dash over to my desk, talk to somebody else along the way. I could have 5 to 15 touch points as I move toward my desk. Now, how do you emulate that? Well, you do. You emulate the brick and mortar feeling of those touch points. So how do you do that? Well, you duplicate yourself. First, as a supervisor, you literally can pick up the phone while someone's on a call or doing emails and they're on the clock and you leave them a message. "Hey, listen, thanks so much for coming in and working an extra shift." Or, "Wow, I saw that 100% CSAT come in." Or, "Gee, thanks for showing even when you weren't feeling 100%. We really needed you today. Email, queue is packed." And you leave that. That's a touch point. You can ask people inside your team to do touch points as well, people that want to be leadership development candidates. When the QA comes by and they're talking to folks, or we're having team meetings, all of these are touch points. And so you want to have as many touch points as possible. The other piece is this communication feedback loop. It's extremely important that everybody know what's going on. So how you communicate, and as often as you communicate, is going to be important. So how you walk the virtual floor 5, 10, 15 times a day, what you say, the behavioral patterns that you see on the floor and any changes. You're telling them what's going to happen that day. You're reporting back into them. You're giving them praise. You're making comments in the chat. You're picking up the phone. These are all touch points and creating a feedback loop that can be duplicated in your team. That's the key. And yes, this takes time, but you're going to spend the time either way. On the front end, being proactive, or on the back end doing damage control when your boss calls you in and says, your HT is slipping, or you're not doing many emails, or people aren't showing up on your team, and you're trying to do damage control and explain when you really don't know why, but you're trying to explain why it's happening, and now you need to go fix it. So you're going to spend the time either way. So high touch point and communication feedback. Julie, I'll take another question.
Somebody had asked a question. It was actually incomplete. It looked like it had been cut off when they had emailed it. But what I think they were saying was, what is your best suggestion for motivating and engaging my agents?
Okay, great question. So motivation is an individual thing, right? What motivates you is different than what motivates me. So you have to find out what motivates people. Now, it could be another shift. It could be they want time off the phones or the email queue. They want to lead a roundtable. They want to move to the QA department. They want to go to training. They want to help lead a team meeting. They've got a great idea for a knowledge-based quiz that they want to lead in the team. Find out what they're looking for. They want to be promoted to be a supervisor. Find out what they want, and then always keep that in front of them. So you phrase things like this. Mary, I know that you really want to share or lead the next team meeting because you want to be a supervisor. Here's what I really am noticing that I'd like you to help us with, walking the virtual floor. Do you think that you could praise 2 or 3 people in the morning when you first get there and give them some positive feedback of things that you're seeing in chats and the stats that we're posting? Can you do that? And I think that is one way that you really can show that you want to move into a leadership position. So again, you're keeping that motivation in front of them, and you weave it into emails. Hey, I was just talking about you with another manager. We were talking about people having challenges with the knowledge base. I mentioned you by name, and I want you to get me a sort of a script or a sort of a draft of what you would want to do. And I want to pass it on and talk about your idea to the other supervisors in my next meeting. So again, you're keeping that in front of them. Also, praise is a really good one, and acknowledgement. Acknowledge of their good ideas and having a bad day and still showing up. Again, communication and touch points. I hope that answered the question.
Awesome. Somebody asked, how can I help lonely agents?
Okay, great question. So people are lonely because they're not feeling the same way as they did in brick and mortar. So, it wasn't the muffin lady that walked through or the taco truck in the back of the contact center that you all conjugated around. It was literally about the camaraderie. It was about touch points. It was about communication. So again, what I would do is I would identify the people in your organization, in your team, whether you're a contact center manager, director, supervisor, VP, identify those folks that have leadership tendencies and ask them for help. Maybe your next team meeting, whatever level you are, you don't do it yourself. You have someone open it, someone give a tip of the day, someone ask and answer questions for 5 minutes, and have somebody else close it. And that gets them motivated and excited. It also gives the other people opportunities to ask those 4 people questions through the chat or after work and texting, because trust me, they're talking after work. They're texting during work, even off company software platforms. So it's going to increase the amount of talk and communication through the organization when you start divvying up some of your own duties and letting people do something. And if you're a director, you could have a supervisor or contact center manager do some analytics and present it at your next director meeting, or put together a slide for your executive meeting. You just have them do part of that, and then you compliment them and you have them share it. Then other people ask questions, and suddenly everybody's talking about a lot of different things. this is what people are looking for inside of the work at home environment. They want to feel part of the greater picture and not just be at home in their pajamas, doing texts with customers. I hope that was somewhat of an answer. Julie, I'll take another one. How much time do we have left? Okay, I've got some time.
Okay. This person says, my director is frustrated that she can't see the floor anymore. So she's developed a checkoff list for me and all of my team leaders. I feel like I'm being micromanaged by her and it's forcing me to micromanage my team and they don't like it either. Any suggestions on what I can do?
Yeah, I absolutely can. So let's think about the psychology of that. Why is the VP doing that? They're doing it because they can't see, right? And a stat or some key performance metric is not where it needs to be. And someone above them is asking questions. So in order to feel like things are really happening, they have to create this checkoff list. I was actually talking with a consulting firm that's very big in the contact center space a couple of weeks ago. And they don't have much work at home, but their clients are asking them. So this gentleman tells me that they put together a cadence. A cadence is like a checkoff list. And it goes something like this. I said hello to them when they arrived. I coached them. I sent them an email with their stats. I said goodbye to them before they left. That's their way of managing people. So here's what that does. And I had a client that was a Fortune 100 company that forced their team leaders and their supervisors to do the very same thing. And everybody got a code. It was green if you were doing good, yellow if you were caution, it was red if you were in the red zone and really needed help. And you're forcing people to cheat. You're forcing people to stretch. So what happens is this: you're going to go into a coaching and somebody's just had one of their kids have pneumonia and they've been up all night and they just need someone to talk to. So you're a people person, you love your folks, right? So you listen, but then you got to check off those boxes. You've got to say, oh yeah, listen, I feel terrible about, your little girl. She's Renee, I feel terrible for her. However, I just have to tell you, you have 3 more absences before I have to put you on a PIP. And your average handle time is too high. We need to get it down for about 45 seconds. And really, you're behind on your self-guided training. Could you get those done? I'm so sorry to have to bring that up, but I really hope Renee feels better. Then you get off the phone and click, click, click. And that's because somebody upstairs wants to be able to see a lot of green and say, well, my folks are doing it. Meanwhile, the numbers aren't moving. So what you need to do is, 1, explain what others have told you. Go out and gather information. Ask your fellow supervisors. So let's say there's 20 supervisors. Find out how many feel that they can't tell the truth. How many people are frustrated. They feel disconnected. They feel micromanaged. Put the percentages together and just ask to speak to the VP. Ask to speak to the director. Ask to talk with the person that's making that rules and give them data. The second thing you need to do is you need to take control over your own career and change the way you navigate, because that's really what you want to do. Re-engineer how you navigate in this, what we call virtual first environment, where everything you're looking at is through a virtual first tool. And so you look at it and you decide that you're going to put more time into touch points and communication. And maybe you cut your coaching down or your time in listening to calls. Maybe you come up with a pilot program where you say, I'm going to try this for a week and see if I can get my stats to move, and you present that data. You're going to have to sort of stick your neck out a little bit and try different things. And if your VP calls you on the carpet or your director calls you on the carpet, you just need to say, I've got an idea that I want to try for 2 weeks, and I'm going to report back the numbers to you. I believe I can get that metric to move, because at the end of the day, it's about how you move the needle. If you can't move the needle, whether you're coaching your heart out, whether you're checking off the box, whatever you're doing, you have to move the needle. So try re-engineering what you're doing, and more touch points and more communication with your team. Ask them their opinion about things, and you can always push that upstairs as well. I hope I was able to answer that.
As someone said, I let 2 people on my team go due to performance, and now my team is afraid that the company is laying off a lot of people or going on a firing spree. I've emailed and chatted my team that it's not true, but now my absenteeism is up and the people are paranoid. I spend most of my day trying to keep everyone calm. How do I gain control?
Thanks, Julie. I saw this one when it came in, and it's almost like an epidemic inside the virtual world. And I will tell you very honestly, and very straightforward, from a psychological perspective, And again, I'm going to go back to brick and mortar. So you're sitting in your chair as an agent, you look across the room, you see 3 people in the corner and they're talking. Your brain automatically uses deductive reasoning to look at their body language. Are their arms crossed? Are they whispering? Are they laughing? Are they close? Are they far away? Are more people coming up to the group? And your brain starts going and you start trying to figure out what you're seeing. And if you're not really sure, you ask them in the break, you might even chat them, but you've seen them. In work at home, you don't have any of that. So the fact that Bob's gone for 3 days, he could be visiting his parents for their anniversary. I mean, unless he's told someone, nobody knows, but now they think that, Bob's gone and maybe Bob is gone. But people get afraid when they can't see something. So they start what I call this negative going viral. And literally they're texting, do you know what happened to those 2 people? And someone's like, oh my gosh, they're talking. Do you think they got fired? And someone's like, fired? Oh my God, are they firing people? And said firing? Oh no, I heard they were doing layoffs. And within 15 minutes, hundreds of people are chatting or texting, even on their own private devices, people within their organization, and they're trying to figure out what is going on, and their brains start going. So we're going to go back to that communication feedback loop. As changes are being made, you have to communicate that. In a brick and mortar, you see Bob hauled off to the supervisor's cube, and after 3 or 4 times, you roll your eyes and go, well, I guess he's been written up. Well, I guess that's why he's gone, because you can see it. But in virtual, what you have to do is you have to explain things. Now, as a supervisor or as a director or whatever, we can't go down and say, listen, we just fired Bob. We can't say that. But what we can say is, listen, we're doing evaluations. We're trying to find out how we can help you. I want you to have your list of 3 things that I can do to help you. And I'm going to commit to 1 or 2 of those. And I'm going to commit to helping you achieve your goals. And then I need feedback from that. So that feedback loop starts. So you tell them what you're going to ask of them. They give you feedback and you feed it back to them and you try to help them. You tell them how you're helping them. So if Bob ends up leaving, they're like, well, she asked for 2 things and she's been open with everybody and Bob's gone. It becomes very minimal instead of all this negativity. Remember, negativity travels faster in a work at home environment than positive. You have to control the narrative. And by having lots of communication feedback and getting feedback from folks and using video, telling them, hey, this is what we're going to do. And this is what I expect. And can you give me some feedback? And then you go back to them in another video and you say, 28% of you said the way the scheduling, you don't like the way it's done. I'm going to go back and see if we can get that glitch in the scheduling software fixed. Thanks for letting me know. And then reporting back. I talked to the workforce manager and here's a workaround. Right? So it's, again, communication feedback, and you do that for every single thing. So there's lots of communication feedback. So what happens? More touch points. People aren't lonely anymore. They're more engaged. They're talking among themselves about the software. They're talking about what they can do to get better. So things begin to have a more positive approach, and those go viral. And that's when the snowball happens and when magic happens inside your work at home environment. That's my answer to that question. So remember, touch points and communication feedback loops. Always let them know what's going on.
Awesome. We have time for, we'll do one more. Let's see, this person says, I'm a VP of customer service. My organization seems like it's okay. We relaxed the KPIs during lockdown, and now I'm trying to get the numbers back to normal. Our staffing requirements aren't being met. I want to help my team see why getting back to normal is important. Any suggestions?
Sure. Okay, I'm going to go back to the communication feedback loop. When there's a challenge, I always tell my organizations the truth. I just go out in a video and say, listen, I've got a business challenge. Here's what happened. And you can tell them, we try to get everybody home. Now we've been in this thing for X amount of months or X amount of years, and we're struggling with certain things. We relaxed our CSATs. We relaxed our first call resolution because people were frustrated. Our average handle time went up because we were trying to calm everybody down. And now people are asking me upstairs, or my boss is asking me, what can we do to get things back to quote unquote normal? How can we get our KPIs back, our CSATs up, our sales conversion up? How can we get first call resolution up? How can we be more efficient in handling our emails or our texts and interactions with customers? And so what I would tell you is go to the floor, start a communication feedback loop and ask them for help, explain the problem, ask them for help and report it back. So a lot of times they're going to say things like, well, if you gave us 4 hours off email every day and we could just relax out of our 8-hour shift, acknowledge it. Part of that feedback loop is going back and saying, we had the suggestion of 4 hours off the phones or off emails and 4 hours of actually working. Let me tell you why that won't work from a business perspective. And you explain it and you chuckle a little bit, right? And say, but however, we had 28% of you suggest this. And I think that's a really good idea. So what I'm going to do is put together a couple of questions. I'm going to send down a 1-minute survey, 2 questions. If you can answer those questions and send that back to me in the next 48 hours, that would be fantastic. Keep your surveys down to 2 questions in less than a minute. You'll be able to get people popping them. You'll be able to get more cooperation, more participation, more touch points, and you're going to get more good data. Then you go back and you say, okay, that I've been tasked with getting CSATs up or making us more efficient when we're emailing customers. So, or emptying out the email queue faster. And here are the 3 top things that you think we should do. Now I'm going to ask you, how do we do that? You send another survey. And so what you're doing is you're getting information from the floor. You're feeding it back to the floor. And now they have a personal stake in the success. So take one suggestion and put it in 1 or 2 of your teams. If you're a director, call center manager. If you're a supervisor, split your team in half. Have half do one and half do the other. And then have them measure it. Did it move the needle? What stat did it move? Was there a change? Well, people were happier. Well, if they're happier, something's changing in a metric. Maybe you need 2 more weeks, but report that back. Pilot team number 1 did this, and this was the result. And they need an extra couple of weeks. They feel it's getting better. We've seen the stat move 1, but not enough. So we're going to try that for another 2 weeks. Now, the second team, it just didn't work. They just said it was a lousy idea. They threw the baby out with the bathwater. Thanks so much, Roadrunner team, for trying that. And the third team did X, and this is the traction that they got. And now people have a personal stake. And now guess what they're talking about in their text after work, in the chat rooms. They're talking about your organization and how to make it better. And that's the positive talk. And again, that's when the snowball starts going. So communication, feedback loops, full disclosure, transparency, and touch points. And you get people involved so everyone's being touched. The loneliness goes away, employee engagement goes up, absenteeism comes down, and your other key performance metrics will absolutely change. It's a foolproof method, and it absolutely works. So I know we're coming up at the bottom of the hour. I know I didn't get to everybody's question. We'll have another sip with Vicki next month, and I will answer more questions. I'll also be doing some ad hoc videos. But what we're going to do is send you an email. We're gonna give you the link to this video on YouTube. We're going to actually time mark it. So this question starts here. This question starts at this time. So you can have it as easy reference. Feel free to pass that on to your colleagues, to your team, if you feel that it will help them. We're also have launched this new YouTube channel so you can subscribe, and we're going to be putting virtual leadership tips and strategies out there in videos. And we have also started posting on our company page, Virtual Live Labs, on LinkedIn. So follow us there. And our next virtual sip with Vicki is going to be in June. It's going to be on a Wednesday on the 16th. And by the way, we did listen to people when they said, gee, it's a little too late for the East Coast. So 1 o'clock Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern in June. So we'll be sending the link out there, and we'll be sending an invitation for you to join another virtual sip with Vicki. Thanks everybody for stopping by. I appreciate your time, and I'll see you at the top. Thanks everybody. Have a great day and evening.